Hey everybody, welcome back to Elevator Pitch. My name is Joe Ennis, and today I am talking to Christine Miles. Christine is the founder of a company called EQuipt, and EQuipt is a coaching service that you can get for your business to help your sales team or your IT team or just your business in general to learn how to listen differently. Christine has been a coach for over 3 decades, helping people learn the importance of listening correctly. Christine learned early in her life that everyone has a story, and that grew into kind of a passion to understand people. She is the author of a few books, which she actually talks about her new book in this episode. She is also a radio host on the Executive Leaders Radio Show and a creator of the Listening Path, which is a new approach to understanding and listening. What I really enjoyed this episode as someone who listens to people all day, it's interesting to know that I might be listening incorrectly or need to listen in a new way. So listening to this episode could hopefully help you do that. Christine brings some really cool advice on how you can better listen, whether you're coming from a sales team or, IT. Overall, I thought it was a really good episode and I really enjoyed it. Christine, thanks again for coming on. And remember to check out the description for all of the links regarding Christine and her service, as well as a link to her new book, which is going to be coming out soon. Thanks again for joining us, Christine. Thanks again to everyone for listening. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Elevator Pitch. Today, I am super excited. I am talking to Christine Miles. Christine, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
So, Christine, let's just jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about EQuipt and what you are setting out to do.
So EQuipt is a business that I started based on my background, both professionally and personally, where we equipped humans and organizations with the human skills, the people skills to drive business success.
That's great. And so what are, in your field, one of the things that you've talked about with EQuipt, as far as I've talked to you, is the importance of listening. And how businesses can sometimes, and people can sometimes listen incorrectly. Why is this an issue that you see a lot of businesses facing, and how are you guys trying to solve that issue?
Yeah, I call that the foundation of the house. If you don't have a solid foundation, you're not really going to last, for centuries. So while we're in the business of what we call EQ, the emotional skills, I think the world knows they're important. They know it's something that you either have or don't have as much of, and that it needs to be developed. But listening is really, if you don't know how to listen to yourself and others, you're not going to get very far. So, and I think it's a problem that the world is thirsting to be understood. And I really hope to create a movement where we start to shift from teaching people just how to talk, tell, and know, which is what we predominantly do, and help them understand that the most powerful form of communication is what we hear, not what we say.
I like that. So when you go into a business and you're going to work with them, what does that kind of look like? Is it more of a coaching perspective? Is it more of like handouts and deliverables, kind of like a product or a course? What's it look like?
So it's a little bit of both, because by way of background, I have, my background's in psychology. I was, an athlete back in the day. So I think behaviors matter. So behavioral change is the only way to really make an impact on the business. So we're not just go in and coach a little bit or train a little bit. We really have created an experience where we can help people transform how they listen by learning our framework. And we do that through what we call team coaching or workshop venue. So we have a high touch formula where we have coaches that work within the workshop with a facilitator to deliver how to do it and get people to not only see it, but also be able to apply it.
I like that. That's cool. So is this your like custom framework? You guys built this method from kind of the ground up, or is this something that you've been applying from someone else's teaching?
Well, it's taken years to kind of edit it down to make it simple, not easy. So yes, this is something that comes from from me, and then my team and I have kind of honed it over the years, much like a Broadway show, right? You think it's just going out and, hey, that's great, Hamilton was amazing, but it really, I think, would it take them 6 years to finalize that?
I
And
don't know. If
yeah,
if it only took 6 years, that's pretty impressive.
it's pretty impressive. So, the backstory for me is that I grew up in a family where listening was very important because I had a mother who had psychological issues. So my role in the family was to understand her pain that wasn't visible. And I had a father who listened very intimately to his customers to be successful as an entrepreneur. And so this was part of my language and nomenclature from an early age. And it's pretty much why I've overachieved in anything I've done is only because of this ability, not because of the other things that I have. It's only turbocharged. So I built this knowing, hey, there's a gap in the world. We don't teach people how to do it. So I learned this young. I know what works. I figured out how to get there. So let's get there faster. And we created the framework to do that.
That's great. So the framework not only helps people learn how to do it better, but in an efficient and quicker method than potentially another one.
Yeah, I'm highly impatient, Joe. Listening is a patient activity, but doesn't mean you can't do it more efficiently and get there faster. I often say there's a difference between a weekend athlete and an Olympic athlete. Like Tom Brady and I can both throw a football. I have a feeling he's a little bit better at it, but probably because he knows exactly how to do it at the most efficient level. And then he's practiced it with the right skills for a long time. Those two things have to marry together to make it work. But if you don't have the right system or tools framework, you're not going to get anywhere.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, One more follow-up question to kind of what we're talking about how you kind of go into and how you kind of work with these businesses. Are the people that you're usually teaching more like sales teams, or is it kind of everyone? What kind of businesses do you guys work with?
Well, listening differently applies to everybody. So that's a good and bad problem, right? Let me preface it with this. This is a problem that people don't know they need to solve, which is why I recently wrote the book, What Is It Costing You Not to Listen? What I realized is that if you ask people, well, is listening important? Everybody raises their hand. And then you say, well, what are you doing about it? And nobody raises their hand because it's an invisible problem. It's death by a thousand cuts. You don't know you have it until it's too late. So yeah, I mean, think about the number. Sales is a big proportion of who we work with. You go in to understand, the first thing you teach in sales is understand your customers' problems, pains, and needs. Well, how do you get to that? You have to learn how to listen to what the actual problems are and get the full story. But we also we work with IT organizations because they have to also uncover the real need. You think about customer service, somebody's upset. What's the real problem? And you can say empathize, but sometimes it's hard to empathize with what people are calling about. It doesn't feel like it's a real problem. So it's all about really getting to that level of understanding.
That's great. And I mean, I think a lot of what you said, you've kind of already answered this question in a few different ways. But what would you say sets you EQuipt apart from another, let's say, just for the sake of example, training, like coaching team when it comes to someone like sales or the other example, you said IT, I believe? Was that the other example? Yeah. So
Yeah.
what kind of sets you guys apart from another coaching team like that?
Well, there's a couple things. I'll save the latter, which is how are we teaching people to listen? That's a differentiator. But if you look at most sales um, processes or training programs, they're really about how to manage and navigate the sale more than they are about the relationship. So what's the process? Like there's a book that became and a methodology that became very popular and rightfully so, called the Challenger Sale. It's really in a complex sale. How do you take control, tailor, and teach the customer? So that's all great. And I'm a believer in that because I think that's the only way to drive value. The problem is the presumption is I have a relationship with you that gives me the right to teach you to tailor and control what I'm telling you. People don't like to be told what to do. So this is where we're focusing on how do you engage to earn the right to do the things you need to do in the sales process. In other aspects of organizations, same thing. I have to understand before I can problem solve. People tend to problem solve, even if they know the solution, they might be right. I'm not going to listen to you until I'm sure you understand what my problem is.
Mm.
So that's where we pivot, and it's called a slow down to speed up. If sometimes we want to just move forward when you really have to just pull back and look at the whole landscape. So that's one way that we're different. And then how we approach listening is very different. Most of the world's teaching what we call attentive or active listening, which is about how to be present and make eye contact and empathize and ask questions. And all that's great, but that's what to do, not how to do it. And it also really underachieves because the brain is the enemy of listening. We have all kinds of things, all kinds of noise going on in our subconscious brain. And it's like you have to give it a sedative in order for it to engage and listen differently.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the right tools to get that calm, you're not going to listen no matter how hard you're trying. There's too much interference. So we solve that problem.
That's great. I love that. And then you've also, so why is, if you were going to talk to a business right now and they were asking, well, we could go with you guys or we could go with another group, why would you, or that maybe might be focusing on a different type of skill, why should people matter about or care about listening first before potentially teaching their team or their sales team or their IT something else instead? Why is listening kind of the foundation?
So I wouldn't be able to answer that question until I talk to that customer, to be honest with you.
Sure.
So sometimes other things need to be done first. And that's a discussion. We're not cookie cutter, and timing is everything. Do I believe that listening is the foundation? I absolutely do. But depending on where an organization is, for example, with their sales team, their experience, what they've already enabled, all that matters in terms of when and how they would institute this. So there's not a one size fits all approach. We go in and listen before we answer.
There you
So
go.
I'm not going to, it's funny, a few years ago, we did a keynote for a short workshop for at a sales meeting. And the guy that brought us in said, the reason we hired EQuipt is they discovered exactly the way I want you to discover. The whole discovery process. He said, it's because of that why we decided to go with them. I think that's so important, that, and we're not right for every organization. We want leaders and people who believe that listening is fundamentally an important skill to have and be able to do in order to be successful. If that's not where a leader's head is, then we're probably not the right solution.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just having a interview with someone yesterday, which is the episode before this one, who was basically saying the same thing. He was a marketer, and they did a lot of website marketing, and he was talking about, you need to go in and you need to know it. You need to evaluate the potential client before you say that you're necessarily right for them or not. But just like he said, and I say the same thing. You need it. When you have a company like yourself or like me or like this other guy, his name's Ryan, going in and evaluating the company and listening to what they have to say and knowing if you're the right, potential solution for them is actually very important as a business owner. And then if you are the right solution, you'll, with what you're talking about, with the correct form of listening and using listening correctly, you'll know how to tackle the problem better as well if you are the right person for them. And I really like that. And that's something that I've been kind of teaching myself, is that sometimes I'm not necessarily right for everyone. And I can kind of tend to think that I am. But that's something I'm learning, and I like that.
And I would imagine that's because you can be helpful, right?
Right.
What you do is helpful to people and organizations, as is what we do. But I think that helpful and results are two different things. And so I think that's the other thing that is a little bit of a differentiator for us, is that we're solving business problems, not just teaching human skills. What are the problems you're facing? And is this part of how we can help you overcome those problems and actually deliver a result, an ROI? So can we help you shorten your sales cycle? Can we help you close more deals? Can we help you stop selling on price and drive more value? Can we help you deliver your digital transformation processes more effectively? Like, agile processes are all to make sure there's different gates that we're successfully meeting, but they're not teaching you how to have the conversation in a way that we make sure we're even aligned about what they are. So there's a missing link, and we know we're a big part of that. But again, we have to really assess, are we there at the right time with the right needs, with the right solution?
I love that. That's great. Christine, in closing here, a few final questions. Number one, if someone is listening to this, pun on purpose.
I've heard it all, Joe.
Yeah.
Like, I've gotten a lot of, you wrote what, huh?
You said what?
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, right.
But if someone was listening to this and wanted to be a better listener, what are some tips that you could give people right now to just think about in their day-to-day, whether it's just conversations with a friend or conversations with a potential client?
Mm-hmm. So there are quite a few tips. There's a lot of tools. The one thing I want to caution is that you can't white knuckle your way through listening. It's because we've shown, we can show you how you'll fail at listening even when you're trying to concentrate. Again, the brain is the enemy, the subconscious brain. So you do need the tools. And one of them is just a couple key questions. This is by no means all of it, but we tend to ask very diagnostic and prescriptive and factual questions. If you really want to listen differently, just add this question to your repertoire. How did that make you feel? When you ask a loved one, a friend, a business leader, your colleague, whether they're talking about business or personal, well, how did that make you feel? You're going to find that you're going to hear more of a story and more of that person than you can ever imagine. And if you just start to pay attention to what the response is, you're already in the right loop. So there's other questions that great interviewers and even therapists use, but that's just one thing that can be such a game changer in how you get people to open up to you.
That's great. I love that. Christine, thank you so much for coming on today. I know you have a lot in the woodwork right now, and I would love to just let you plug away, let people know how they can get involved with you, if they want to work with you or your team. Please talk about your book, just everything that you want to talk about. That you have the stage.
Well, I appreciate that. So the book is called "What Is It Costing You Not to Listen?" So that question is important because if it's costing you something, we can help. The book will be out in October is when we're launching. So if you're interested in learning more about the book or about us at EQuipt, you can go to www.equipt, that's EQ for a reason, EQUIPT-people.com. And you can also text me at 484-252-1593. I love it when customers that are interested in knowing more want to reach out, and we can set up a 30-minute call.
Love it. And listeners, as always, or watchers, the links and everything that Christine mentioned will be in the show notes below. Once your book comes out, we'll add that link to this as well. So, maybe if you're listening to this by the time the book is out, you can go get that as well. Christine, thank you again for being a guest. I learned a lot, and I definitely realized that this is something, as someone who interviews people constantly, should be learning a lot more about than potentially I'm putting the effort into right now. So I will definitely be staying in touch with you.
Well, I appreciate that. My pleasure.
Well, thank you again for coming on today.
Thank you.
Hey, I want to thank Christine one more time for coming on. It was a great episode. Remember, if you're listening to the audio version of this, click the subscribe button. It really helps us out, lets us know who's listening. If you're watching the video version, click the button above my head to subscribe, or click one of the videos to my left, and you can subscribe there as well. Thanks again for listening.